Morning again, Mayor and Council. I am Shirley Spears with the San Angelo NAACP, and we are here to present information to the Council to help us get restrooms at Martin Luther King Park, located in North Angelo on Martin Luther King Drive. So we're asking for funding and construction of restroom facilities at the Martin Luther King Jr. Park and recommending anything related to it that we discussed today. The park was renovated in 2003 and 2004 with CDBG funds, totaling the amount that's shown there of about $139,000. Existing restrooms on septic and in poor condition, so they couldn't bring those restrooms up to code. There was a lack of funds and general standards at that time for what they considered neighborhood parks, but I will explain to you in just a little bit how we were able to confirm with the Parks and Recreation Department that Martin Luther King Park, in fact, is a community park, which makes it eligible for additional things. The portable restrooms were installed at that time, and they're still in place, as though it's a construction of some sort going on there. And adding the restrooms was put in the budget, but it was never actually completed. So here is an example of what the site looks like. It's a beautiful park. I think most of you have been to the Martin Luther King Park at one time or another. And it's a nice community park, but the restroom creates a major obstacle for the community and the city to be able to use it. I'm going the wrong way. Let me go back the other way. So here's the current view of what the restrooms, I'm sorry, Brian, I need some help on that. Here is an example of what the restrooms currently look like. These are just simple porta potties that you see normally on a construction site. There are two of them there. They're not marked by gender, so you just go into this enclosed area that has these this wooded fenced area, and then it has these two portable potties. Here is an example of what the new restrooms could look like. We had worked with the Parks and Recreation Department in 2019 to give us some idea of what a replacement restroom would look like. These are similar to what restrooms are in some of the other parks in the city of San Angelo. And you see it provides for protection, and it certainly has a better look for a public park than what is currently there with temporary portable potties. This also is a diagram of that same restroom style. Here's another example of one where it has a little bit more of a overhead and coverage on the facility. Either of those would be acceptable in terms of what we have today. And another diagram of that particular restroom. This is the inside of what the restrooms would look like, so it's a lot better than just having the temporary portable potties that we have at the park today, and would allow for urinals and regular toilets in either of those styles. There were some considerations in 2019, and I'm sure that this has gone up because it's been a lot of things that have happened since 2019. So these are just estimates that were given at that time. It was between $196,000 to $262,000 in 2019. So the maintenance on installing those restrooms on a yearly basis was between $10,000 and $12,000 a year. And I'm sure that the Parks and Rec and other city employees can help us bring these numbers up to date. But this is what the estimate was 2 years ago when we first started working on this. There are some considerations that certainly we have to have. The funding source at that time in 2019 was undetermined. I believe that's still the case. We don't know where the funds would come from. We have worked with our city council person to make sure that in that particular district, single-member district, that we can try to allocate some funds to get this done. There was a suggestion of using sales tax revenue to get that done, and then also talk of perhaps going after any local grants that the city may be eligible for. I'm not going to go through all of the park classifications, but I do want to focus on two, and that is the community park. I'll start with that's important for us to know, and then neighborhood park. When we first started this process, it was told that Martin Luther King Park was a neighborhood park. And the purpose of a neighborhood park is listed there is for outdoor recreation, and the development, meaning areas that are included, is very limited, and it only covers up to about a half a mile. It had always been considered a neighborhood park by a lot of people just because it was in the middle of a neighborhood. We then got clarification from Parks and Rec that it in fact is a community park, which addresses a broader range of recreational needs, and it also includes restroom facilities. This particular type of park covers up to 2 miles, and it's 20 to 50 acres, generally speaking, for a community park. So we have determined that Martin Luther King Park, in fact, is a community park with clarification from Parks and Rec. Again, I'm not going to go through all of the different classifications of the park, but those are the two that I wanted to bring up. The points of interest and community points of interest are listed here. I'm not going to go through all of those either. But the visitors for this park are from all over the city. This is another piece of information that was confirmed in 2019 from the Parks and Rec Department. We have annual community events that take place there, namely Juneteenth, which is very limited now. We don't know what's going to happen in 2021 for Juneteenth, but I do know that I've had a lot of complaints, and several members of the NAACP have had several complaints because when you go to enjoy a wonderful celebration such as Juneteenth, then you have to leave the park to go to a public restroom because the portable potties is not what any of the families or individuals can safely and comfortably use. Blackshear High School normally has a reunion every other year. They have stopped having events there because it's just too troublesome because of the restroom. We have a lot of families in that direct neighborhood, but they don't have anywhere to change diapers if they were to bring their children to the park. Temporary portable restrooms have been in place for 20 years. We think this is just totally unacceptable, and that the city does need to help us to identify where additional funds can be. This community deserves to be treated fairly, and to have temporary construction look at the Martin Luther King Park for 20 years is just unacceptable. We presented this 2 years ago to the council. We included and invited many members and community members to participate in the CIP in 2019, and it has not been added to the budget. We've had several attempts to work with Councilwoman Gonzalez in Single Member District 4, and it's just showing how we have made attempts and have contacted her and have talked to her in the last 2 years. In June of 2020, meaning just last year, these are the other activities that we did with Councilwoman Gonzalez to try to figure out what we could do to work within her direction to help us get this issue resolved. So that now, in 2021, we have started a citywide petition to prepare to present to you, which we are prepared to present. I have confirmed that we did not need to bring the petitions to the council today because we did have the item on the agenda, and we did have a council person, Single Member District 4, Ms. Gonzalez, that assisted us in getting this item on the agenda. To date, we have over 550 signatures, and all of these signatures are from local citizens, so we know that there is an interest. I want to give credit to Carl White from 2019, who had a lot to do with this presentation, and the information pretty much remains the same. We did add some additional information to it, and we also included some photos for it. So we would like for the mayor and the council to give great consideration for replacing the restrooms at Martin Luther King Park just as quickly as possible. The community refuses to wait another 20 years to have this done, and so we're asking for support to move this forward. Thank you very much. I'll entertain questions.
Thank you, Shirley.
Do I have questions for Shirley?
No, I just need to make a comment. I want to thank you for your presentation, and I want you to know that I am very much concerned for these restrooms, have been for the last 6 years. But like we say, you know, things happen and things take priority over others. But we will continue to explore any avenue to see if we can come up with some type of resources to fund this project. I don't know how long it'll take, but I can honestly tell you that we'll get on it and we'll try to do something. As your council member, I will do the best I can. And in return, I'm sure that the rest of us up here will do the same.
Mayor, I'd like to make
Yes.
a comment, just a point of clarification. You keep saying neighborhood and community park. It's always been my understanding at this point, City Council has never upgraded to a community park from a neighborhood park. You mentioned March of 2019. It is still my understanding that it is still a neighborhood park. And I just wanted to make sure that I've made that clear because you presented it as a community park, but it actually, in actuality, is still a neighborhood park.
Well, my understanding, City Manager Valenzuela, from Carl White, Director of Parks and Recreation, that it is a community park. So that is the information that we're going with. I'm not trying to imply that it was upgraded, but that for years that it was presumed that it was a neighborhood park when in fact it was a community park, and that was what he confirmed with us in 2019 when we went to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board.
Okay. I'll have to get some clarification from him because right now, really, it's still, in my books, it's still a neighborhood park. And I just want to make sure that we're very clear on that.
Okay.
Again, nothing's come before the City Council for an upgrade on that yet. So, but again, that is something that I know that you heard Tina earlier talk about the CIP process. That's a process, of course, we do follow. After we get the results back from the community's participation, then we do have a meeting with City Council to take a look at priorities for the future. I know the CIP, especially this year, is going to be especially troubling, especially that we're looking at our sales tax revenues and other revenues that, quite frankly, with the COVID issue that had developed this past year, we were seeing that revenues that will actually be dropping off, so we have to be really careful how we actually forecast for that CIP. But we definitely will be having a discussion about that here in the very near future.
And I'd like to also just reiterate that we did participate in that process in good faith in 2019 and nothing happened. So we're hoping that we plan to participate again this year, and we recognize that with COVID, that's a priority just for everything.
Yes.
But we're just asking for some consideration. I don't know if any of the tiers money can be used to help us with this or any other money that may be available, perhaps any additional partnerships that the city could establish with other organizations to help us raise this money. And I don't want to make light of COVID-19. Please don't think I'm doing that. But I think 20 years is long enough to have temporary restrooms at a public park in the city of San Angelo. And that is what the constituents are saying also in that district. So we're just asking that you please prioritize the replacement for these restrooms after 20 years of not having any.
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you.
With that,
I have a question.
Yes, Lane.
If this discussion is going to go on, we definitely need some updated construction costs. That's from
what I was gonna
2019 to
Is
2021
Carl here?
is going to be drastically
Right,
different.
if council, typically as we go through the CIP process, as they've mentioned, if those are priority areas that you want to focus on, then, we can request from the vendors to get additional updated cost for those.
Yeah, I think we definitely need
course,
those because
As everybody knows, construction costs, one thing is getting the vendor, but then the labor part is sort of unpredictable. So that's
Right.
a best guess, but yes, that can be done at council direction.
And then also with a city property like this, is there any avenues that need to happen if fundraisers want to occur to help supply money for this? Do they
Well, I
have to
think
go
number
through-
one, we've got to look at all the resources, Lane,
Right.
and the number one thing is grants, because most grants require participation. And so I think there will be an effort to look at grant opportunities. There are organizations in San Angelo that have been very supportive of projects. So for me, that's the number one thing, is taking a look at grants. But with that, we certainly have to have new costs. But we also need to continue, as Daniel said, making sure we understand the conversation of neighborhood versus community, better define that, because if we're changing one park from neighborhood to community, do we need to be changing other parks from neighborhood to community? I'm not sure what the number one criteria is that moves one from one area to the next, but I think council needs to better understand that. And so Carl will be asking you to educate city council and the mayor on your conversation with Shirley on upgrading it from neighborhood to community, and is that an implication that applies to other parks as well? But there are organizations that we'll be making phone calls to and ask what their areas that we might be able to look at. in addition to looking at the CIP in total and making sure that we understand all of the high priority projects that need to be funded. But we will certainly pursue these grants.
Typically on the grants, getting a grant, a state grant or something like that for a restroom is going to be tough. There may be some local entities that may help with that more, whether that be the Health Foundation or whatever. And as the mayor stated, if you're going to look at this, and I know you're going to review in the CIP process, you're exactly correct. I can use Glenmore Park as an example. Very heavily used park, same scenario with porta potties. So those are considerations y'all will have to consider, and building it is one thing, maintaining it is another. I know staff continually says we're supportive of those things, but if we're going to build it, we need to have the money to maintain it properly. That means the staff to go in and clean it and all of those things. So we want to consider all those aspects, but you're right, and we'll look for those and provide information as we can.
All right, and I just want to also, Mayor, just reiterate, again, just for the sake of my presentation, I'm not saying upgrade and no disrespect to the city manager, but we were never told that it was an upgrade. We were simply told, and I see that Mr. White is here this morning, maybe he can expound on that. But we were never told it was an upgrade. We were simply told that it was, in fact, a community park. And so if we have misunderstood something, we apologize. But I keep hearing the term upgrade, and that is not what we were told, is that we were trying to upgrade it. We were never told it was an upgrade request.
Well,
So-
I think I just think the word upgrade is being used because if you go from porta potty to a permanent facility, that would be an upgrade in the facility. And might not be the right adjective.
Okay.
Might not be the right noun, but certainly if you go from a porta potty to something more permanent, there's a change.
Well, there was a reason that the porta potties were placed there to begin with, and I think that Carl can provide more information on that. So if that's the concept that because the porta potty was there, because there was a restroom there before, and when they put the porta potties in almost 20 years ago, they covered the restrooms up, where the restrooms had been, and put in the temporary portable potties. So it had a restroom before, which also is indicative that, in fact, it was a community park and not a neighborhood park.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shirley.
All right.